Hello. Thank you guys for being here. It's a total honor to be part of TomTom. And I want to thank all the founders and the producers of TomTom for welcoming me and inviting me to be part of this. Those two words up there are totally psychedelic when I look at them. What is Meow Wolf? What is Meow Wolf to me? It's a really long and complicated and strange story of how something that is so deeply personal then gets out into the world and becomes today what is a business. So when I look at those two words and I look at that logo on the screen, it's a business. And it's a business that has one location, one physical location inside of Santa Fe, in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And we have a giant guardian robot as well. That's proof that we have a giant guardian robot. This giant guardian robot oversees our one location. It's 30,000 square feet. It's inside an old bowling alley in Santa Fe. And these are the founders of the business of Meow Wolf. Now, like I said, Meow Wolf, that name represents a lot more than just a business, but today that's what it is. And what we do is, inside of this building, we have brought the expression of hundreds of people to life through an immersive, interactive storytelling experience, basically like an immersive art installation. And this immersive art installation is called the House of Eternal Return. And there's kind of a sense of mystery. It's kind of like an escape room. It's kind of like a children's museum. It's kind of like a playground. And when you go to the House of Eternal Return at Meow Wolf in Santa Fe, you buy your ticket, and you go inside of the exhibition. And the moment you walk inside of the exhibition, you are free to do whatever it is that you want to do. You are now standing at the front yard of a Victorian house, and nobody tells you where to go. Nobody tells you which direction to go in. Nobody gives you a map. You are standing there all on your own, and you get to decide what you do. That agency is really significant. Most people, of course, decide to go onto the front porch and then into the house. And you walk inside this house, and inside this house, it looks a lot like a Victorian house. And you have you can walk around, you can look at photographs on the wall, you can see the family that lives there, you can open their drawers, you can look at their journals, you can look at their photo albums. You can learn about the family that lives inside of this two-story Victorian house. And as you explore and kind of like snoop around, totally again like on your own time, own agency, you start to realize that there's like some wonkiness to this house. Things aren't totally normal. There's like an air of mystery that surrounds you. And you start kind of digging in deeper. Maybe you open the refrigerator and you realize that it's a secret passageway. And the refrigerator then takes you into this magical, trans-dimensional travel agency called Portals Bermuda. And you wonder what's going on here. You might go to the laundry room and open the dryer and realize that it's a portal. It's a slide that takes you into this magical treehouse fairy tale land. What we've learned is that people really like to go inside of household appliances. That's something that we know for sure. There's something near and dear to our hearts to that. But inside of this, once you get through the house and you go through these portals that have been created through this time-space compromise, that's all kind of part of the story of this family. You then are on the other side, and you get to explore this beautiful multimedia, collaborative, maximalist art installation that was put together by hundreds of artists over the course of a couple years. And actually, I really like this picture. There was a moment when we first opened that this 8-year-old walked into the forest. And the moment he walked in, he dropped to his knees and he put his hands up and he said, "I've been waiting my whole life for this." It's 8 years old. Us too, we have two. But then you have 18,000 square feet of art installation that just kind of traverses through a variety of spaces. All these spaces vaguely tie back to a story, kind of vaguely tie back to the family that lives in the house. And each of these spaces they're autonomous, but they're all interconnected in some kind of maze-like sort of way. Individual artists worked on some of these rooms. Many of these rooms are collaborative, interactive. We encourage people to touch everything, to interact with everything, musical instruments. Rooms that are, that are inspired by other contemporary artists like Kasama or Terrell. We even have a music venue. There's a 400-person music venue within the context of the art exhibition, within the context of House of Eternal Return. So we can have other programming. We can have music shows. We can have presentations. So this is sort of where we are now. This is the thing that we have in Santa Fe, New Mexico, House of Eternal Return, Meow Wolf. But our story actually dates back a decade leading up to this grandiose exhibition that we created. And it dates back to really cold, dank, uninsulated warehouses with cardboard and plywood and scrap materials and a bunch of people in their 20s who were making minimum wage and had no place in the world, had no venue to express. In 2008, we started Meow Wolf just as an art collective. We were a bunch of kids in Santa Fe who felt like we were on the outside looking in of the art world, of cultural conversations, of just the world. And we kept on wanting to be invited into the world to express ourselves and to be who we were, and nobody was inviting us. And so we said, all right, we're gonna just do it ourselves. So we started our own space. We invited our friends. It was all volunteer ran, so we didn't say no to anybody. It was an open door collaborative. There was no applications. There were no obligations of fees. It was totally open door. Anybody could come in and do really whatever it is that they wanted. And chaos totally reigned supreme back in the day. It was all about chaos. And in fact, people would bring agendas to meetings, and others would rip the agendas up and throw them in the air and say, that's not what Meow Wolf is about. We're not, this isn't corporate America. So it was kind of crazy. We pulled materials out of dumpsters to make these art installations. We kind of held them together with baling wire and zip ties, basically bubble gum and toothpicks. These exhibitions were dangerous. There was electricity that was improperly ran, and there were mice that were all over the warehouse, and yet people loved to come to them. The general public in Santa Fe at the time, maybe 100 or 200 people would show up to our exhibits when we opened them. This one was called Habitats, and it literally made out of trash. But we made these forts, these weird post-apocalyptic worlds. And we got better at what we created. In 2011, 3 years after we started the collective, we created the Do Return. And Do Return was a giant ship that we built, all volunteer time. People worked 16-hour days. We would work our restaurant jobs, get off from work at 10 p.m., go to work on the house or on the Do Return on the ship, work until 3 a.m., spend all of our time, all of our money on this ship, go back to work and do it again. And it felt like as a group, 200 of us at the time, that we were all working towards something greater, and we didn't really know what it was. The Do Return was this giant vessel. It allowed us to work on a single piece together, and the Do Return landed in this fictional environment. It's the first time that we really started to tell a more direct story with the type of installations that we were creating. And there was interactivity. People could play with the stars or play with the lights in the environment. And we learned some really significant things from this show. 25,000 people came to see this show in 3 months. And it was like a line out the door when we opened. And there were people who were coming to this museum. This was at the Center for Contemporary Arts in Santa Fe. There were people who were coming to the museum that were who'd never stepped foot in a museum before, never stepped foot in a gallery before, didn't speak English. There were kids that were wanting to come back over and over and over again. I actually had a mother come up to me during the Do Return and say, I just want to thank you because the Do Return is the only thing that has pulled my son away from video games all summer long. And that moment, when that mother told me that, was a big aha moment for me. That's when I looked around and I said, this isn't just about a bunch of kids expressing themselves anymore. This is about us bringing forth to the public something that was desperately wanted, desperately desired, and something that was trumping video games for like a 12-year-old boy. So I also thought like, oh, there's a product here. So I started to think about this from a perspective of business. But we didn't know what we were doing. We were still like scrapping this together. We'd never paid anybody before. We hadn't raised any money. All of this was just basically like donations from our friends and families to make the ship happen. And after 3 months, we had to take it down. And we didn't know what we were doing next. And a couple of our founders, Matt and Katie, they worked at a food delivery, like a local kind of food delivery service called Dashing Delivery. That's what they did to get by, making minimum wage. I was arrested for shoplifting a couple times in my early adulthood. Literally like bottom of the barrel, trying to make it work in the city that we lived in. And we're looking around saying, okay, it's been 3 or 4 years of Meow Wolf, like what are we doing? We're making all this work and people love it, but we can't figure out how to keep it sustainable. Because in the art world, you're thinking like nonprofit, you're thinking like, I need to write a grant, I need to bring in money through like foundations. And so I went and I signed up for a thing called Creative Startups. It was his inaugural year, it was in Albuquerque. And it was a startup accelerator for creative entrepreneurs. And it was at Creative Startups that I realized that all of my scamming and shoplifting and hustling and like, I always kind of thought of myself as a criminal, but actually I was an entrepreneur. And that was the first time when I like made that connection. It was like, oh, I like to be disruptive to systems. That's what I really like to do. I like to figure out ways to like, to make stuff happen in ways that other people haven't before. Creative Startups taught me this very important lesson, 4 stages of creativity. And they go in a very specific order. Creativity is this, it's vision first. It's resources or finances second. It's then capacity that those resources bring you third. And then it's completion or delivery fourth. And a lot of times people let the vision, which is the first step, get compromised by the second or third step. You say, your brain doesn't allow you to think of the thing you want to do because you're worried about who's gonna do it. Or you're worried about where is the money gonna come from to do it. And what Creative Startups said no, create the vision first. Don't worry about where the money's coming from. Don't worry about who's gonna deliver it. The vision has to happen first. After that, the money will come. Once you have the money, you'll hire the people to do it. Once you hire the people to do it, you'll deliver the thing that was the original vision. So we found this bowling alley in Santa Fe, and we started to kind of sketch out some ideas for what we could do inside of this bowling alley. We started to think about the business plan of it. We said if there's 25,000 people that come to the ship, then we could probably get 100,000 people a year to come to a big show inside the bowling alley. But we needed somebody to buy the building. So we ended up I went to this guy, George R.R. Martin, the author of Game of Thrones. And I had known George, he lived in Santa Fe, and I said, George, do you want to buy a bowling alley? He said, no, not particularly. But he saw this sign, he saw this bowling pin sign when he went and looked at the property, and he asked me, he said, if I buy the bowling alley, can we keep the sign? I said, yes, George, we can keep the sign. So it's in the lease, the sign has to be kept. So he bought it. That was a really big first domino for us. And we started to sketch out the project. Vision came first, concept art, design the space, all the while raising money to make this whole thing happen. Over the course of 14 months, we ended up raising $2.7 million, like literally just grinding it out to get investors to invest in this crazy idea, this immersive installation. We had never had a business before. We had never constructed anything like this before, and I love this image because it really proves just how bad we were at making stuff. This is on the front page of our local newspaper, and it's like a 19-year-old intern who's getting blasted in the face with like the light of a welder. But we worked for 14 months, cut school buses in half, installed them. And by the time we were done, we ended up having what is now the #1 attraction in all of New Mexico. We had anticipated 100,000 visitors a year through the House of Eternal Return, and what we ended up with was 500,000 visitors. And the lines are around the block every single weekend. And the people who are coming to see this exhibition are of every walk of life. And our assumptions that we had made when we first started this were correct. Humans want creative experiences. And the art world has sort of co-opted the creative experience and has made it an exclusive for those who can afford the type of business model that makes the art world function. And there's become this huge separation between the majority of the general population and the creative experience. And what we've done is we've created a bridge between that. And people are traveling from all over the world basically just to walk through strange-looking spaces. We have, in our first year of operation, we made $6.5 million. In our second year of operation, we made $9.5 million. We now are expanding to Denver in a 90,000 square foot space right in downtown Denver. We're also expanding to Las Vegas, right off of I-15. And we've bought ourselves a 50,000 square foot fabrication facility where we can now employ 300 people all in the creative arts, filmmaking and fabrication and art, and they get salaried wages and they get full benefits, and it's all to continue to create these magical worlds that other people can participate in. Thanks. And it's that how hard people work to sell one painting for $10,000 when there's a whole world of people out there that will happily spend $20 to experience the work. I think that's important for and this can work this is Santa Fe, New Mexico, 70,000 people live here. Our closest city is Albuquerque, which is like 1 million population, and that's an hour away. This can work in any city in the world. And people are dying for it. People are desperate for creative experiences. So we've taken this and we've now branched out even farther. We have a film and entertainment company that we've started. We launched products. This is called the Experience Tube. The Experience Tube is an analog social media device. You can buy these, experiencetube.com. This is a funny picture of the Experience Tube on the Today Show. Kathy Lee had a hard time with it. We also do VR. We launched a VR project that debuted at South by Southwest this year. And we also had a documentary film about Meow Wolf that premiered at South by Southwest as well. And so when I look back and I think about this logo, I think about this name, Meow Wolf. Yeah, it's a business right now. It's a brand. It's a creative brand. VR company, film company, art company, Experience Tube, analog social media company. It's my expression. It's my personal expression. It's an expression of hundreds of people in Santa Fe. It's an art collective. Really what I think it stands for more than anything is this beacon of collaboration. And collaboration is a funny thing because we all so badly want to collaborate, we want to work with others, but oftentimes we're not willing to do the hard work that it takes to work with others. Oftentimes we want to say me, 100% Vince, is going to work with so-and-so, 100% so-and-so. And then those 100% butt up with each other, and then we say, we fight. We say, well, I don't believe blah, 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 and then we move on. And what this collaboration for us, what this logo stands for me, is the ability to stop, literally put yourself aside. Allow yourself to be wrong. Allow others to be right, even when you so badly are differing on opinion of something, and allow them in. Stand in their shoes, see it from their perspective, become them. Let half of them become you, and give half of you to them. And there's a self-sacrifice in that collaboration that is necessary. It's a necessity in order to be creative, in order to create. And so Meow Wolf, for me, really at the end of the day, it's a representation that through collaboration, through self-sacrifice, through understanding others' viewpoints, people can together build beautiful worlds. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vince, for sharing this remarkable happening that you've built, combining creativity and artistry, organization, building a network, building a business. I think it's absolutely amazing. And so before we turn to the audience for questions, and we have 2 mics at the end of each lane here for questions, so please, we invite you to come forward and to ask a question. But let me ask a couple just right now. It takes an open mind to be constantly inspired as an artist, and you can see this with the context you've created. One way to do that is to have an empty space of creativity and to be willing to spend time developing that theme, and you've done that, and now you're going to do it again in Denver. You're going to do it again in Las Vegas. I love that. In this way, you're open to new ideas and you bring in new ideas.
Yep.
But how do you stay inspired as an artist?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think that the open space that you speak about is, gosh, it's really awesome. I mean, it's the chaos and the order and the balance between the two. And, in physical space, we literally define, in Meow Wolf, we define integral borders and then allow for spontaneity to happen within that space. And so knowing where design is integral, but also understanding where spontaneity is integral. And that's chaos and order being balanced. And that's in physical space. That's literally like, these walls have to be integral. What's on the walls can be whatever. That same thing, though, happens in our brains and in our ways of thinking. Everybody wants to design out everything. But inspiration comes from spontaneity. Inspiration comes from the freedom of space, the chaos of life, all the possibilities of the world, and one enters and you're like, yes, aha. And if you build too many walls, that spontaneity doesn't have space to come in. So I think that my inspiration comes from stuff like the Experience Tube, It's like, we don't have to do that. We don't create products, but this is a really cool idea. Let's do it, Come out of nowhere, let's do it.
Thank you. Before I turn to the audience, let me ask a question about networks of an artist. And I ask this because of just what I heard from my mother, who is a terrific artist. She's my favorite artist, naturally. But she didn't go to a formal art program. She always felt that the fact that she did not develop a network within the artistic community from the beginning of her career set her back, and she felt that she was a loner, that she had to develop her own style, her own approach, very much on your own. What Meow Wolf has done, it has created a context whereby artists collaborate with each other from a variety of artistic backgrounds, and they develop a collaborative project. So there obviously has to be a good working cooperation between the two, a respect and a friendship that goes perhaps even beyond the project. You describe in your presentation, sometimes you guys disagree and so forth. Describe this undertaking of building a network of artists, because I think that that's so important and so unique.
I mean, it's been the last 10 years of my life, and it's been like the most, I mean, it's absurd, you know, the amount of, I mean, it's psychedelic. You get into these spaces with other people that are like, you know, you see yourself in them, they see themselves in you. You can't, you know, energetically, you just can't make it work. You know, when it was volunteer, when it was all volunteer-based, it was like, you just had to work it out. And if you didn't want to work it out, then don't show up. Then like, you know, why do you keep coming back if you want to keep having a fight? So there was like this, for 7 years while it was a volunteer art collective, it was just people choosing to show up again. Like choosing to continue to show up even after a big fight.
Right.
And now, you know, are you gonna stay in that space together and still hate each other, or are you gonna go and talk through it?
Yeah.
And then others being like, I don't want to make art with you two when you guys are, you know, energetically embattled, and so please work it out. You know, others kind of leading that process. So, yeah, I think it's so important for young artists to get together as a group of people. And honestly, like the thing that does it more than anything is when you can find a business model that works, because artists want to get paid for their work. And if you can find a business model like art, like the one that we created here, that brings people together, and that makes people want to come back and puts everything in perspective.
Yes, please. Question.
Thanks. I love that. I think that the worlds that video games suggest, the worlds that even the escape room suggest, sort of seem to be realized in what you've come up with. My question has to go back to the disruption idea. Once you start to get big, and once you have a lot of nodes, different spots where you have different people collaborating differently, how do you attend to the complexity? Because it's already complex just in the small collective you had, just in collaborating between two people. How does a business model allow for something new and different and disruptive in each place that might disrupt the brand that you've set up?
Yeah, you know, the brand that we've created, luckily, is like it's an anything goes brand. And it comes from the character and DNA of a collective, and that collective is often, you know, it's hundreds of people through the door through many years. So we've grown very comfortable to a maximal and textured aesthetic leading up to the point of becoming a business. So luckily, we're in a position where the brand can really do anything. I think it's really important for young entrepreneurs, people who are leading a vision, to understand that as a leader, you have to hire people around you or bring people in around you that are better than you at everything, really. I am not the best person at anything in our company except maybe talking, you know, like that's probably the thing that I'm best at is presentations now at this point. There's better fundraisers, there's better fabricators, there's better artists, there's better filmmakers, there's better idea makers. I mean, and be open in your leadership to bring in other ideas, and that's going to grow value, and it's going to be just more fun to like work with people and kind of get their sense of what's possible, and that's how you can keep it textured and keep it diverse. And speaking of diversity, like for us, like we were a collective, we were a group of friends, so we were all basically white kids in Santa Fe. Now that we're a business, we're like, we can actually like go out and hire and like look for talent, look for a diverse talent. And it's been like so actually like creatively rewarding and socially rewarding to bring people in from a huge background of diversity, people who we have no connection with when it comes to like, you know, heritage. And the kind of magic and creativity that's come from that has been incredible. So I just think like, with your team, keep it diverse, keep it mixed up, and that kind of like, that will always be there, that sort of spark will always be there.
Quick follow-up?
Yes, please.
So what happens when your control is tested? Because when a real challenge to who's in charge comes up.
I wield the sword occasionally and very consciously. I make sure that I pick my battles and that I don't do the my way or the highway very often. And I know exactly when it is I need to do it. And it is in moments when I am the person who knows best. But majority of the time, it's the people I've put around me that know best.
Let's take a question from over here. Yes.
My question is about customers. So what are the values that your customers look for in creative experiences and immersive art experiences? It can be entertainment, inspiration, well-being, it can be anything, but like,
Totally.
what is the biggest value that they're looking for?
Instagram, probably. They really want to show off, tell their friends how cool they are and where they're at, and that's one big one, the Instagrammable. But honestly, I think even more than Instagram is agency. It's choice. People don't have choice in their life, and people don't have choice out in the corporate world. You don't have choice when you walk into Target. It's the same routine. You know what you're there for, and what we do is we let people be scientists again. We give them curiosity, and that empowerment is huge.
We have a lot of questions. Let's take a question from over here.
Thank you. That was very informative. So I have a quick question around process, right? You talked about early on people would tear up agendas and stuff. But as you grew and you started hiring people, you have to have all the boring but essential things like payroll and HR and accounting and all. So at what point did you realize that you needed those things? And then how do you combine that essential process while staying true to this disruptive side?
So, over time as a collective, we actually realized that we needed some hierarchy. We did a theatrical performance at one time, and theater needs hierarchy. It needs a director, it needs set, it needs a script. You need to follow the script. It needs, people to trust each other in that sort of way. And that theater piece really helped create hierarchy. But, really didn't happen until we became a business. At the moment when money came in from investment to create a product, that's when we started to be like, okay, we need accountability around it. And that accountability has grown in the last 3 years immensely. And everybody has bought into that hierarchy because we have protected the creativity and the spontaneity. So we only build the integral walls that need to be built. We don't over-design. We allow for spontaneity to happen where spontaneity is most valuable. And you don't think that there needs to be integral pieces everywhere. Not everything needs to be designed. Only a framework needs to be designed.
Let's take this question right over here.
Yeah, so I'm working with some artists who, to the untrained eye, are doing something very, very similar. How do you think about cooperation versus competition to other artists who want to do something like this?
We come from we're an open source generation. I think that we are right there with our tech brethren with regards to open source, and we think that my philosophy is if artists are getting paid and the general public is getting weirded out, then I'm happy. Meow Wolf doesn't need to be the company that does it for everybody. And like I said, it could exist in every single city, and it doesn't need to be Meow Wolf, and it's not rocket science. You're making really cool art that people can walk through. That's pretty much what you're doing, and everybody wants to do it. And so I want to see it happen everywhere. This is the formation of an industry, not the formation of one company.
We have so many questions, but what I'm going to do, since we have to stay on time here, is ask for these last two questions to be pulled together. Let's hear your question, and then Vince, if you could answer them both in closing, it would be wonderful. So please.
I got two quickies. One, what are the ticket prices for House of No Return?
We're at $25 as our highest point, and it goes down to 15 for kids.
Cool. Two, I've been working with artists for over 40 years. I'm a coach. One of the biggest things I run into with people is that sort of glass ceiling between I'm an artist, not a business person, and how I get there. Right now I'm working with this incredible international group based in Belgium. There is a man who is brilliant. I think you probably missed each other at South by Southwest. Would you consider being someone's mentor?
What's the other question? We'll try to
Exactly.
I would consider it, but I want.
Mine's a long question. Hi, I'm Amber Manry. I'm a UVA alum. I founded BitCubs. I teach children about code and computational thinking. This year, I've been working on an animation project to teach children about code. My question is an IP question. And so I'm currently working on an animatic. I've done character design. I've done very rough storyboard sketches. When do you decide to apply for copyright protection?
Yeah, okay. That's it. I'll answer that one first. That one's an easy one. You apply for a copyright at the point at which you have a product in mind. At the point of a product. I would copyright. I would send designs. Collect your designs. Make sure that you have good documentation of them. But the point at which that you're going to make something from those designs, and you're going into basically product development or some form of prototyping stage. That's where you really want to get serious about that. Yeah.
So would you do it before you created the animatic, or in the process of
When
doing
it comes
it?
to animation, I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
There's pro bono IP lawyers that would be probably better at that. But like for us, we think about it as it is ready to be birthed, as it's real. As like the pregnancy has happened. Like this thing is this thing's coming out. So let's make sure that we copyright it. So, and with this big questions, the idea of artists as somehow, it's so psychotic. Artists being like, thinking that getting paid means that they're not valued or something, that being for profit is somehow undervaluing themselves as an artist is crazy, and is why we have starving artists. And ask yourself, who created that system? Who sits on the boards of nonprofits? Who sits on the boards of granting foundations? And how much money do they have? And then they're asking artists to make work for $25,000 to put up in their museum for a lifetimes of work, and then artists are buying into this system that these people are saying like that your value is not attached to the dollar. Your value is some spiritual value of creativity or something, and the dollar is only going to manipulate that, is crazy. And then the people who are undervalued in our society are artists, and they do it to themselves. And it's like, that is the craziest cycle that we have, and it's got to be broken, So.
Yeah. That is a great segue to our next set of speakers around clarity of purpose and founding. But ladies and gentlemen, Vince Kadlubek, a magic maker from the world of art.
Thank you. Thanks.